It's a very special week for this podcast, but we'll talk about that in the outro. We're here today to close off week 5 with some awards, and we're going to open up week 6 with some updated power rankings, most notably the top 10 teams in the NFL. But I don't want to hold you up, so without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's start off with a recap. Alright, on your screen now you see our pre-week 5 top 10 rankings. Of course, every Tuesday since the season has started, we've been dropping our players of the week and updated top 10 rankings. In last Tuesday's video, this is where it stood, as we had San Fran, Philly, Kansas City, Detroit, and Buffalo in our top 5, and our 6 through 10 was Dallas, Miami, after their loss to Buffalo 2 weeks ago, Baltimore, Seattle, and Tampa Bay. But let's look at some teams that fell out, okay? The Baltimore Ravens, as it was very close, and I didn't really want to move them out, because if I had to bet money, I think they beat the number 9 and 10 teams in the game, or at least the number 10 team in the game. However, the Baltimore Ravens, if they're not number 10, they're number 11. So they fell out of the rankings, but they're right outside, and the Ravens are still the best team in the AFC North, at least as of right now, and they should enter this list next week, right? But they fell out of the list after their meltdown there to Pittsburgh. Some of the teams that are right outside, we have the LA Rams, a team that just lost, and they have a losing record. So how are they right outside the top 10? They've shown a lot of promise this year, and they're a really fun team to watch, especially now that Cooper Kupp's back. So they quietly have one of the best wide receiver duos now in the NFL. And another team is the Los Angeles Chargers with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and well, of course Mike Williams is hurt now, but this team is starting to click on all cylinders, and their offense is electric. We know that, but of course defensively they still have some questions to figure out. But they are right outside. Those are my teams that are probably in the range of 11 to 15. Kicking off the top 10 list here, we're going to start with the Tampa Bay Bucks. We're going to stay put because, to be fair, they did have a bye week, but I'm far from a Tampa Bay fan, in all honesty. But it does feel like an eternity since I've last seen them play. I guess I just got to get used to the bye weeks yet again. Regardless, Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield, they have this team with a 3-1 record. They've picked up a lot of quality wins to start the year, and they are now widely considered a top team in the NFL. But the Baker Mayfield revenge tour is fully underway, and I'm fully behind it. As a Browns fan, I didn't care for him here, but I wanted to see him succeed, unlike other Browns fans. Regardless, again, this defense has also shined at times. It's at times looked like one of the best teams or units in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. Again, this team has picked up a lot of quality wins to start the year, but we're really going to get a good look at how at what this team truly is going forward, as their schedule is far more difficult than the first month of the NFL season. So Tampa, number 10 for now, but can they stay there with a far more difficult schedule? At number 9, we're going to re-enter a team into the list with the Jacksonville Jaguars, as if there was not a magical performance in game from Travis Etienne in London there against the Bills, especially in the fourth quarter, there would be a lot of questions about this Jacksonville team right now. If they were 2-3, as a team that people had as Super Bowl contenders coming into the season, especially myself. However, they did pick up a big win there against Buffalo, and they re-enter this list as a team that should start to get things going, as I had this team as a top 6 team heading into the season, as I do think they're a dark horse Super Bowl contender, and I still do believe they win their division at the bare minimum. However, they did start off the season slow, and I was really just waiting for that big game to put them back on this list. And they did get it there against a top 5 level team in the Buffalo Bills. But with all of that said, Trevor Lawrence, he is back to playing at an elite level, and this defense is starting to take steps forward and show promise, as that was the biggest question coming into the year. Was that defense, and if it would be ready for prime time? Well, they're at least taking steps in the right direction. They got a huge win against Buffalo, but can they keep this momentum going to stay on a top 10 list like this? Who knows, but that looks to be a very tough AFC South there for Jacksonville. At number 8, despite not even playing last week, the Seattle Seahawks jump a spot in my rankings, as I couldn't find it in me to put Jacksonville over them, and Baltimore, of course, fell out of the list. But 3-1 start to the year, 3 straight wins after a very bad Week 1 loss there to the LA Rams. But an early bye week, in my opinion, for the Seattle Seahawks might have been the perfect scenario for them, as Jamal Adams, we know he hasn't really played football in the last 3 to 4 years. He gets even more time to recover, so hopefully we could finally see some healthy football from Jamal Adams going forward, which will help out this defense that has already shown promise. But on the flip side, you have both of their starting offensive tackles have been dealing with injuries. They're both going to get more time to recover, and they might even both be ready to go coming out this next week. So if all of these guys can get healthy, but most notably the offensive tackles, there's no doubt that this offense can look even better than the elite offense that we saw last year in Seattle. And if that is the case, this team might shock some people come January time, as this defense has already shown promise starting off this year. And if this offense can come around, well, it's going to be a scary sight for the league. So number 8, despite not even playing, Seattle jumps the spot in my rankings. At number 7, though, we are going to have a team that only drops 1 spot, and it is the Dallas Cowboys. Look, I couldn't have docked this team too hard because they were playing San Fran. San Fran hasn't showed any flaw this year, at least early on in the season, and I knew that game wasn't going to be close. You know, last Thursday on our prediction video, I predicted San Fran to win by 2 scores, and they won by even more. So San Fran and Dallas, it wasn't really a fair matchup, I guess is a good way to put it. So I knew they were simply going to be outmatched, is the point I'm getting at. Dallas, regardless of everything I just said, they're still a top 7 level team with a great defense, even when they're not at full strength with Trayvon Diggs out. But this team will ultimately still win 10 to 12 regular season games. They're going to make the playoffs. And they're going to always have the conversation of, you know, is this the year for Dallas? But if there's anything that we've learned in the Mike McCarthy era, is that there's always a ceiling with the pairing of Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. And no matter what you put around them, they're always going to give you the same result, which is a good regular season team, just not a great team when it comes to the postseason. And that is ultimately the most important time of the season. Regardless, as of right now, Week 6, 2023, Dallas is a top 7 team in the NFL, and they only drop 1 spot after getting blown out. Another team that's only dropping a spot despite a loss is the Buffalo Bills, going to London on Friday and losing to the Jaguars on Sunday early in the morning in Jacksonville's secondary home. That isn't the problem, and that's not the loss I'm really talking about. Instead, what's starting to worry me about this Bills team going forward, and especially in the postseason, are the injuries that are piling up on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Matt Milano, an all-pro linebacker, he went down with an injury. Their number 1 cornerback, Tre'Davious White, he went down with an injury. Both of those guys are super key parts to their defense and Sean McDermott's scheme, and they're now done for the season. I think Buffalo's margin for error on that side of the ball is already gone after Week 5. They have to be perfect going forward. Luckily, they have a pretty good coach that, you know, specializes on that side of the ball. But don't get me wrong, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they're going to give the Bills a shot on each and every week, but they have to be perfect. And even the sad part is, even if they are, the injuries defensively might ultimately be too much to overcome, and when the time is right, this team might ultimately fall short when the playoffs come around, and that might be their demise this year. Who knows? You know, they could always make a midseason trade or a midseason shakeup. Maybe we see some guys get some opportunity that didn't have it early in the year, and they are viable pieces for Buffalo going forward. However, they've suffered a lot of injuries to that defensive side of the ball. Von Miller's not even at 100%. Can they, I guess, overcome the defensive woes that they've had early in the year? And can this offense play at the level that we know it can for each and every week going forward to keep this team afloat? I guess until they figure things out on that other side of the ball. Before we get into the second half of the list, I want to shout out to today's sponsor, Life by Laura. Laura reached out to me about 2 or 3 months ago, and of course you guys, you've heard about this company if you kept up with the channel on Tuesdays, but she reached out to me and said, hey, do you want a custom tumbler with your custom logo on it? I said, sure, send it out. She sent that out to me within a week, and since that point, I've used it almost each and every day, whether it's cold products or hot products. The insulation inside the cup is amazing. But that's not all for Life by Laura, as if you check out her Facebook at Life by Laura or Instagram at Life by Laura 2023, she does custom t-shirts, tumblers, crafts, and more. I know it's Halloween, and she has a lot of specialized Halloween products coming up, so if you want to look at her past projects or discuss future projects or ideas with her, go ahead and hit her up, and of course drop her a follow on Instagram and Facebook as she's continuing to grow. But shout out to Life by Laura, today's sponsor yet again, and let's get into the second half of the list. Well, I lied to you guys. Don't click off the video yet. Just quick announcement here before we get into the second half of the list. I want to throw this out there. As we know, the first 5 or 6 weeks of the NFL season, Tuesdays have been specialized for the NFL Power Rankings. However, a huge announcement for the channel. The Tuesday episode, the one that you're seeing today, will be transferred over to Thursday. So all of our Player of the Weeks and our top 10 rankings will be transferred to Thursday, as well as our weekly predictions. So Thursdays will be a jam-packed show, strictly because basketball is back. So next Tuesday, we're going to give our preseason NBA Power Rankings, and the following Tuesday, opening night for the NBA, we're going to be giving our NBA award predictions, and of course, opening night preview. We might bring on some guests for that show. So just quick announcement, next Tuesday, it's going to be basketball, not football. At number 5, we have the Miami Dolphins getting back to the place where they belong, and let me explain. As even though they had 3 offensive turnovers last week, this team still managed to win handily against the New York Giants, and they showed a lot of good flashes in that game. Not only did their offense put up 31 points, but the big story is that they had 524 yards. They have now put up the most total yards offensively throughout 5 weeks in NFL history as they edge out the greatest show on turf. Of course, that legendary Rams team. Maybe this is the greatest show on surf. Of course, I saw that joke on Instagram, so don't click off the video yet. But to me, defensively, they also showed a lot of flashes, and that's the flashes I was talking about, as offensively, we knew what we were going to get. But defensively, there's been an adjustment period with Vic Fangio now at the helm, calling the plays, and they're starting to put it together, and all of this is without Jalen Ramsey on the field. So he should be back soon, and when that is the case, this Dolphins team is going to look even scarier. So, again, they're exactly where I had them in the preseason rankings, and I hate to say I told you guys that Miami was going to be a Super Bowl contender, but here we are, right? Here we are in Miami, top 5 in my rankings. A team I didn't have in my top 5 prior to the season, and I will admit that, is the Detroit Lions. As I'll start this by saying that numbers 3 and number 4 are interchangeable. I understand both sides of the argument. Honestly, I wanted to have Detroit as a top 3 team, but I ultimately held myself back. But let's just say that this is a top 3 level team in the NFL in Detroit, and it's time to start talking about Detroit like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And that's a crazy statement. I don't think I would have said that. I don't think I would have said that prior to the season. But Detroit, they're playing as a Super Bowl contending team. It all starts with their quarterback, Jared Goff, who's playing at an MVP caliber level, having a career year for sure. And, of course, shout out to Ben Johnson. But then on the defensive side of the ball, not only do they have an overall top 5 defensive unit, but they're led by a Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner in Aiden Hutchinson, who is playing out of his mind, and we'll talk about him later. But overall, offensively, Ben Johnson is leading this unit, and they should only get better. Defensively, they've looked like a top 5 unit. So if that can continue, and this team can continue to win at the rate that they are, they can make some serious noise come playoff time. And I hope they do. As a Browns fan, I think, aside from us, there's no other franchise and fan base that deserves a championship more than the Detroit Lions. So Detroit Lions, top 4 team in the NFL. Crazy world we live in. At number 3, we're going to have the Kansas City Chiefs, and 4 straight wins after a non-healthy Week 1 loss, which they barely lost. And this is a team that still hasn't been clicking on all cylinders yet. They haven't found their groove yet, and they're still a top 3 team in the NFL. Simply put, you're always going to have a chance when you have the trio of Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and Kelsey, 3 of the best, maybe the greatest, to do it at their respective positions. I would still love to see a midseason trade from this team, however, most notably at the wide receiver position, maybe a guy like Terry McLaurin at the midseason mark. But there's still time for that, and there's still time for this team to make a big trade for the second half of the year. The only reason that I still have this team at 3 over the Detroit Lions is because when they're fully healthy, or I guess I'll say this, if they're fully healthy, or in other words, I guess we can say, if these teams play today, I would take the Chiefs. I would bet money that the Chiefs win over the Detroit Lions at full health. Granted, even if they play today, Travis Kelce wouldn't be at full health, but I would still take this Chiefs team with an injured Kelce over the Lions. I guess that's the luxury you get when you are the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions. At number 2, it's the same story every week. The Philadelphia Eagles, one of the 2 unbeaten teams in the NFL, and the Eagles are 5-0, right? I guess it's also another week where Their win doesn't really inspire confidence in any of us that this is the best overall team in the NFL. At this point last year, there was no doubt this was the best team in the NFL, excuse me. And right now, we're just not seeing that from the Philadelphia Eagles. But no doubt to me, they're the most complete team in the NFL. But when it comes to being the best team, there's still some work that needs to be done. But even with that said, they're still top 2 in my rankings, despite not playing their best. And if there was any team in the NFC to compete with number 1 on this list, it would be the Eagles. And please don't be confused. The Eagles are still my favorite to come out of the NFC. But as of right now, what we've seen, the number 1 team is clear-cut and dry. It is the San Francisco 49ers. They are the best team in the NFL. Maybe not the most complete, but the best as of right now. As Brock Purdy, he isn't irrelevant anymore, right? He's the perfect quarterback for Kyle Shanahan's system. And he has proven week in and week out that he is a high-end starter who can play a critical role in winning big-time games for the San Francisco 49ers. Not to mention, San Francisco has the best defense in the NFL as of right now, statistically and just off the eye test. And maybe they have the best overall roster. Of course, I would edge out to Philly, but that is an argument in itself. This is the team to beat heading into Week 6 of the NFL season. Of course, the San Francisco 49ers. And as a Browns fan, I am scared to death of what the Niners are going to do to us Sunday at 1 o'clock. I think they're going to make quick work of the Browns, no doubt, and improve to 6-0. And this time next week, we're going to be saying the same thing. The San Francisco Niners are the number 1 team in the National Football League. Before we get out of here, of course, we have to hand out some Week 5 awards. The Offensive Player of the Week is Justin Fields, 15-29. 340 total yards through the air and ground, 4 total touchdowns, a much-needed win there for both the Bears and Justin Fields himself. As you can argue, others had better games. I honestly think other players did have better weeks, but this man's job has been in question, and he needed a game like this, at least temporarily, to silence the critics and to at least limit the noise around the offseason for the Chicago Bears. But this team had a little hype coming, behind them, but coming into the year, maybe some playoff aspirations, especially with how Fields played late last year. Rightfully so, this team was expected to be something relevant this year. They have not done that, and like I said, Justin Fields' job was in question. But the team and Justin Fields, they've struggled early on. They fell to 0-4. His future was now in question, and they were playing a Washington team with a great defensive line, and everybody had Washington winning, myself included. So for Fields to come out and have a game like that, and making the statement that he did, it was huge to me, and I'm sure the future of Justin Fields. I don't know what the future is for this organization at that position, but I'm happy that Justin Fields was able to manage a week like that and come out on top finally for a win. Some honorable mentions here, some guys that probably had better weeks. Guys like Ja'Marr Chase with 15 receptions, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Ja'Marr Chase is back and the Bengals are back. I forgot to mention that earlier in the podcast. DJ Moore, 8 receptions, 230 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Could have easily won this award, and in all honesty, I had him as the winner, but check out tomorrow's videos. We'll talk about DJ Moore. Jalen Hurts, 375 total yards. Of course, this team is now 5-0, one of the only 2 unbeaten teams left. George Pickens also has 8 receptions, 130 yards, and a game-winning touchdown. More importantly, as of course I meant to say 6 receptions there, but the game-winning touchdown on a play that was, well, at least reportedly, drew up at the last second. George Pickens, I mean, huge play there at the end of the game, and they got a big win over the Baltimore Ravens. Honestly, I think that the Steelers are now technically the leaders of the AFC North, so I guess shout out to them. Some other honorable mentions are guys like Zach Moss with the addition of Jonathan Taylor. People thought he would fall off, but no, he had his best game of the season. 150-plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Shout out to Zach Moss. Sam Laporta continues to be dominant as he's playing at an all-pro level. Of course, a part of this Detroit Lions team. And Sam Laporta has been amazing so far. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, they had really good weeks there in London, but they didn't come out with the win. Still great individual performances. Another guy we can throw on there is Travis Etienne off the top of my head. But Defensive Player of the Week, no doubt in my mind, it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson, as he had 1 interception this week. Of course, on that screen pass where he caught it one-handed and then almost took it to the house. So Aiden Hutchinson, he's one of those DNs that are oddly good at getting interceptions. Regardless, he had 8 quarterback hurries, which led the league, 1 sack, and he is no doubt a Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner a month and a half or a month or so into the season. He's the leader of this top 5 defensive unit, like we talked about earlier in Detroit, and he's looked amazing in his second year out of Michigan. So Aiden Hutchinson, no doubt to me, Defensive Player of the Week. But ultimately, that is going to do it for today's show. As again, we ran through our top 10 rankings, our Players of the Week, and if you stay to the end of the episode, drop a like on the channel, or drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Ultimately, we're on the road to 1K, and if you enjoyed it at any point, please help us get to that point, as that'd be greatly appreciated. But again, this version, I guess, of our show, so the Players of the Week and the top 10 rankings, from here on out will be transferred to Thursdays starting next week, as basketball is back. And just to be fair, we'll have an NBA Tuesdays, NFL Thursdays, just like we've always done on the channel. So just so you guys know for the future, that is what's ahead of us. But Thursday, if you guys are still here, that is our 1-year anniversary of this channel. So if you guys want to tune in Thursday, that would be greatly appreciated, as we've come a long way from episode 1. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you guys tomorrow for some fantasy football.